Welcome to Gozroth Tutorials. I'm Gozroth, and today I'm going to show you how to create a follow script. And just to demonstrate what this is going to do, this guy has a raycast on him. And when I pass through that raycast, he starts to follow me. And he follows me, he looks at me, and if I jump, he doesn't move up and he doesn't rotate looking up at me. And if I go into build, you can see he's returning and rotating to his starting position. What I have here is I have this group. This is what's going to be following the player. And we see he has a raycast. It's in a group. And we have this sound recorder, and I'm using that as a placeholder, basically its starting position. If I open up this, it is animated. It has our follow script attached to it. And if I were to go into the group, I have a raycast. The only thing I have changed on here is the raycast distance. Like the default is like 2000. I have the raycast distance set to the distance I want the enemy to stop following me. And if you wanted it to follow an object or both, you would have to click object tag or both and then give it the tag of the object you want it to follow. It will be a local script, so to change that, we'll go hit this cog and we'll change the execution mode to local. And since we're dealing with a local script, anytime ownership transfers, when world is started runs. And when we do that, we have to transfer ownership. We need to transfer ownership to both this object and the raycast since we're using it in the script. So we will have to create an object variable for the raycast. We'll just call it raycast. And then when world is started, we can transfer ownership. And that is in actions. Towards the bottom, we have player, and we can transfer ownership of self and the raycast. So we'll grab self, which is under values, and then we'll grab the raycast. And since we're going to be using owner of self quite a bit, I'm going to create a variable for that of type player, call it owner, and then on world start, we will set, so values set to 2, grab our owner player variable, and we're going to set it to owner of self, which is under actions, owner of object, and we will drop self in, and then we can drop our owner player variable into the player slots for both objects. So anytime ownership changes, we're going to set the owner variable to the owner of self. So if it's server player, if it's another player, then we're going to transfer ownership of both objects to that new owner. And this is just so that I don't have to get the owner of self all the time. I only have to get it once, and then I can use that variable over and over again. In order to move the object, we're going to use onUpdate. So we're going to go to events. We're going to scroll down to update events and grab onUpdate. And the first thing we want to do when you're using onUpdate is have everything behind a Boolean. So we're going to create a Boolean and we're going to call it can follow. And then we will just check if can follow equals true. So if we just drop the Boolean in here, that's the same as saying if can follow equals true. Since it's going to be running every frame, we do want to make sure that the owner is or is not the server player. So we will do that check as well. So if we're going to grab an equal, so under logic, if owner equals server player, so under values, scroll down value input, server player, we're going to fire our raycast. We're going to go to actions, scroll down to raycast, and we're going to use just regular raycast, and then we're going to drop in our raycast. So if the owner equals server player, we're going to fire our raycast because we don't need to keep firing it if it's no longer the server player. We do need to check if what we're hitting is a player. So we're going to grab another if, and we're just going to go to operators and scroll down to raycast. It's towards the bottom, get raycast data, and we're going to check if we did hit player from that raycast. And if we did, we're going to transfer ownership of self to the player that we hit. So we're just going to grab this get did hit player, drop it in owner, change it to the player hit from that raycast. So the moment I transfer ownership, this will start. We're going to set owner to that player. So now it'll be my player. And then we're going to transfer ownership. And then this will no longer fire because owner is no longer the server player. So we can grab an else. And we're going to need to create a couple of variables. So we're going to go to variables and we're going to create a vector for start position, create a vector for destination. We'll create a rotation for start rotation. And we'll create another rotation for end rotation. And we will also need to create an object for our placeholder. And before we get too carried away, let's open up our property panel for this guy. And we're going to drop in our placeholder and our raycast. and we'll set can follow to true. If the owner equals the server player after it had started following the player, we want to reset its destination back to the starting point. So we're going to set destination to the position of the placeholder. So we're going to go to operators, we're going to find object, transform, we're going to grab position of object, and then we're going to grab our placeholder. But if it's not the server player, we want to set our destination to the position of the player. So we're going to go to operators, we're going to find player, and we're going to grab position of player. And we're going to set it to torso, and we can use our owner variable. And now we're setting our destination. However, we will not want to set our destination if we found a player. So in this case, we will just set destination to the position of the placeholder if we did not hit a player. And now we have to set the rest of our variables. So we're going to go to values, grab a set, and we will set start position to position of self. So we can grab our position of placeholder here, drop it in, and then grab self, replace placeholder with self. And then we can set our start rotation to rotation of self. So back into operators, find object transform, rotation of object, and we'll set our end rotation. Grab our end rot, and the end rotation will be the look at direction. So we'll go to operators, vector math, look at, and the forward, which is a directional vector, will actually be the position of the player minus the position of self. So we'll grab a subtraction sign under basic operations. We'll drop in position of self, which is start position, and then position of the player, which is our destination. And then with up, we'll just use a vector input of 0, 1, 0. And then we can move. So we'll go to motion. We'll grab a move to and a rotate to. And we're going to lerp the move and rotation. So we're going to go to operators. We'll scroll down to basic math and grab lerp. Lerp requires two vectors, a from, a to, and an alpha. So the from will be our start position and our start rotation. To will be our destination and our end rotation. And then our alpha will be a value multiplied by delta time. So we're going to have to go over here and create our values. So we're going to create two number values, move speed and rotate speed. And we're going to multiply them. So we need to go to operators, basic operations, grab our multiplication, and we will drop in our move for move and rotate for rotate. Then we'll scroll up a little bit, grab our delta time, and we'll paste them in here. And the reason we multiply it by delta time is so that we can get a normalized speed based on all the different headsets. Because all the different headsets have a different processing speed, like the Quest 2, the Quest 3, the Pro, they're all different hardware. So the amount of frames that they can process in a second may differ. So if we multiply this speed by delta time, it will normalize it, because delta time is the amount of time it takes for a frame to complete, or the time between frames. I forget which one. But if we multiply like this, we can get a standard speed for everybody. And that's what we want. And before we get carried away, let's set those values. So let's say move speed is 2, and then our rotation speed, let's say, is 3. We can see that it already turned around because it's trying to get to its point. Then if we get in the way, it'll start to follow us. But if I jump, it will look up and move up, and we don't want that. We want it to stay at the same height. We want it to stay looking in this direction. We don't want it to look up and down. And if I go back into build mode, we can see it's still trying to follow me. So we do need to find a way to remove the ownership once the player gets so far away. And we're going to create a distance. We're going to create 3 new number variables. One's going to be our stop distance. We're going to create a stop follow distance. And then I'm going to create another one called distance. And right after we set our start position, I'm going to set our distance variable. We're going to grab a set. We'll grab our distance, and we're going to set distance to the distance between the object and the player. So we're going to go to operators, scroll down to vector math, grab distance 2, and then distance A is start position and B is destination. And then we'll check if our distance is greater than our stopping distance. So we're going to go to our operators under logic. We're going to grab a greater than sign. And then if distance is greater than our stopping distance, we will set these. So now we got to set those variables. Our stopping distance we can set to 1, and then our stop follow distance we'll set to 3. So now once I get close to it, it will now stop 1 meter away from me. That way it's not pushing me all over the world. If the distance between the object and the player is too great, we want to stop following the player. We don't want to stop moving, but we want to move to this position. And there's a couple ways we could do it. We could just, throw in a move to over time, but we're going to use this. We're going to grab an if, and we're going to put it right above our move. And if the owner is no longer the server player, so if doesn't equal, grab our owner variable that we created, does not equal server player, and we could throw an and in here, grab another if, we'll throw an and, so under operators, grab an and. So if owner does not equal server player and distance is greater than our stop follow distance, we're going to transfer ownership. So then we're going to go to our actions, find player, transfer ownership of object, and we're going to transfer the ownership of self to server player. And then we can move. Because when we transfer ownership to server player, our destination changes to here. So you see now it went back over there. It sees me, it's following me, and then if I were to go into build mode, I'm now farther away and it moves. However, it's still rotating in ways I don't want. It's still moving in ways I don't want. In order to fix the movement issue, we need to update our destination. So we want to set our destination variable to a new vector. So we're going to go to operators, scroll down to vector math, and grab new vector from X, Y, and Z. We're going to drop that in, and we need to get X of vector, Y of vector, and Z of vector. And destination will be used for the X and the Z, and then start position for the Y. It will follow, it'll still look up and down, but it's not going to move up and down. It's always going to stay at that Y. Fixing the rotation is not as easy as this because we don't have X of, Y of, Z of the rotation. There are code blocks for them in one of the assets. However, they're buggy and they're not reliable. So I will not use those. I have to get the Y in a different way. And in order to do that, we're going to create a couple variables here. We're going to create a string variable, call it rot, create a number variable, call it start index, another one for end index, and another one for string length. Right after we set our end rotation, we're going to set our string to end rotation as a string. And we're going to go to values. We're going to grab typecasting as a string. And this will set the string rotation to the actual values of the X, Y, and Z. However, there is some formatting we have to do. So we're going to set our start index. So we got to go grab another set. We're going to grab our start index, and we're going to go do some string formatting. And that is towards the bottom, we have text, and we're going to get index of substring. And the substring is going to be Y in string. However, if we get just the Y, it will print out Y colon space, and we don't want those. So we have to increase the start index. So I'm just going to duplicate this, grab a plus under basic operations, and we're going to put our index of Y in rotation in the A, and then we'll put a 3. We're going to do something very similar to our end index. So we're going to grab our end, put that here. However, we're not going to be adding, we're going to be subtracting. So we do need a subtraction. And instead of Y, it'll be Z. And instead of 3, it'll be 2. And then we can set our string length to end index minus start index. And then we can set our rotation string to the subindex of that value. So we're going to go down to text again. We're going to get substring of string, and it's going to require the string, which is rot, the start index, which is start index, and then the length, which is our string. And this will return just the y value of the rotation, but it's as a string. So when we use it, we have to set it back to a number. So we're going to grab a set, and we're going to set our end rotation to a new rotation. So we got to go back to vector math, new rotation from XYZ. We don't want it to rotate on the pitch and roll. So we're going to grab a number variable of 0 and drop it in. And then our yaw will be the Y. That way it rotates like this only. And then we need to grab a variable as a number, drop in rot. It starts to chase me. And if I jump, it no longer looks up. If I get below it, it will never look down. It will always be looking on this plane. And then if I get too far away from it, it goes back to its starting position. Just do a quick recap on the script. When world is started, we're going to set a player variable of owner to owner of self. And then we're going to transfer ownership of self and the raycast to that player variable. On update, if can follow is true. If owner equals server player, we're going to fire our raycast. If it hits a player, we're going to transfer ownership of self to that player, and then this runs again, setting the owner no longer to server player, but to the player that was hit. If it doesn't hit a player, we're going to set destination to the placeholder, which is this sound recorder gizmo. If the owner is not a server player, we're going to set destination to the torso position of the player. Then whether or not the owner is a server player or a regular player, we're going to set our start position to the position of self. We're going to set distance to the distance from start position and distance. If that distance is greater than the stopping distance, we're going to set start rotation to the rotation of self. We're going to set end rotation to look towards destination minus start position with an up vector of 0, 1, 0. We're then going to set a string to that rotation as a string. This allows us to manipulate that string. So we set our start index to the index of y in that string plus 3. And then we set our end index to the index of z minus 2. We set string length to end index minus start index. And then we set rot to the substring of rot from index start index with length of string length. So this returns just the y value of that rotation. We then set end rotation to a new rotation of 0, whatever we got from the rot string, and then 0. So that way the x and z are always 0. We then set our destination to a new vector, x of destination, y of start position, and z of destination. And the reason we use y for start position is to prevent the object from moving up and down. If the owner is no longer the server player and the distance is greater than the stop follow distance, we're going to transfer ownership of self to the server player, which when we do that, it sets the destination to the placeholder. And then we're going to move self to lerp start position, destination, move speed times delta time, and then we're going to do the same thing with our rotation, lerping start rot, end rot, rotation speed times delta time. And that's all I have for this video. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this video, or if you have any suggestions for a future video, please let me know in the comment section below. If you liked the video or if you learned something, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.